The baby isn't yours, Andrea. It never was. The words detonate in the marble foyer like a grenade. Andrea Patrick stands frozen in his janitor's uniform, still damp from the overnight shift, hospital discharge papers for Ella crumpling in his fist. Wendy Smith faces him in a silk robe barely concealing her swollen belly, her face drained of color, her green eyes wild with something between guilt and terror. What are you talking about? The contract, Wendy whispers, her voice fracturing. Section 14, Clause C. You never read it, did you? If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Outside, Houston's dawn breaks blood red over the River Oak skyline. Inside, the father who signed away everything to save his daughter is about to discover that some deals aren't what they seem. And some millionaires don't want your child, they want something far darker. You may not believe that desperation can make a man sign away his future without reading the fine print. You may not believe that wealth can hide cruelty behind charity. But this is the truth. And this is the story of Andrea Patrick. Andrea was a single father working the night shift as a janitor at Stellar Tech Solutions in downtown Houston. A man life had beaten down so completely, he'd forgotten what standing upright even felt like. Every morning, Andrea woke at 5 a.m., not to an alarm clock, but to the sound of his 7-year-old daughter Ella's labored breathing through the thin walls of their cramped Heights apartment. Ella had leukemia. Stage 3. The kind that required experimental treatment costing $350,000. Treatment their insurance company labeled non-essential. Andrea had nothing. Just calloused hands scarred from years of hard labor, a mountain of medical debt that grew like a tumor, and an ex-wife named Simone who'd fled to San Antonio with a mortgage broker the day the diagnosis came. Andrea's life hadn't always been wreckage. 2 years ago, he'd managed a warehouse in Pasadena, owned a small house near Hermon Park, believed in Sunday barbecues and Little League and the promise that hard work meant something. Then came the hospital bills. The foreclosure. The bankruptcy. The night Simone packed her bags and spoke the words that still echoed in his skull like a curse. I can't watch her die, Andrea. I just can't. So Andrea took a janitor position at Stellar Tech, Houston's fastest-growing cybersecurity firm, because the pay was marginally better and they allowed graveyard shifts so he could be with Ella during the day. Every night, he mopped floors in offices worth more than his entire existence, watching through glass walls as executives made decisions that moved millions while he scrubbed their trash. And every night, Andrea noticed her. Wendy Smith, 38, self-made tech millionaire, CEO and founder of Stellar Tech Solutions. Forbes called her Houston's most ruthless innovator. Employees whispered she was the Ice Duchess. She was always the last light burning on the 19th floor, always alone, always working like she was running from something she couldn't name. Andrea had never spoken to her. Never dared. Men like him didn't exist in her universe. Everything shattered one October night. But to understand how Andrea ended up in that mansion 6 months later, you need to see where he was before, back when hope was already a luxury he couldn't afford. 6 months earlier, Andrea's life existed in a cramped Heights apartment where the walls were so thin he could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's television through the plaster. Every morning at 5 a.m., he woke to Ella's labored breathing, that wet, struggling sound that made his chest tighten with fear he couldn't show her. Stage 3 leukemia. The oncologist at Texas Children's Hospital had delivered the verdict with clinical precision. Experimental treatment, $350,000. Insurance won't cover it. Andrea had calloused hands from years of manual labor, $47,000 in medical debt already drowning him, and an ex-wife named Simone who'd chosen escape over endurance. 2 years ago, life looked different. Andrea managed a warehouse in Pasadena. He owned a house near Hermon Park with a backyard where Ella played. He believed in Sunday barbecues, Little League, the promise that hard work meant something. Then came the diagnosis. The hospital bills that multiplied like malignant cells. The foreclosure notice. The bankruptcy. The night Simone packed her bags and spoke words that still carved into him. Asterisk, I can't watch her die, Andrea. I just can't. Asterisk. She left for San Antonio with a mortgage broker named Kevin. Left Andrea with her dying daughter and debt that would outlive them both. That October night, Andrea was cleaning the executive break room on the 19th floor when his phone buzzed. Texas Children's Hospital. His hands went numb before he even answered. The oncologist's voice came through like a death sentence. Asterisk, Mr. Patrick, Ella's white blood cell count is critical. We need to start treatment within 10 days, or, asterisk. The doctor didn't finish. He didn't have to. Andrea collapsed against the granite counter, phone slipping from his hands. 10 days. $350,000. He had $180 in his checking account. He'd tried everything. Bank loans denied due to bankruptcy, fundraising pages buried beneath thousands of other desperate pleas, even researched selling a kidney on the black market before realizing it was too dangerous and still wouldn't be enough. Asterisk. Why are you crying? Asterisk. Andrea's head snapped up. Wendy Smith stood in the doorway at 2 a.m., designer pantsuit immaculate despite the hour, green eyes sharp as broken glass. I'm sorry, ma'am, I'll get back to. Asterisk. Answer the question. Asterisk. So Andrea told her. Everything. The leukemia ravaging his daughter. The experimental treatment that insurance called unnecessary. The wife who abandoned them. The 10-day deadline. The mathematical impossibility of survival. He didn't know why he was confessing to a stranger. Maybe because she was the only person awake in the entire building. Maybe because he had nothing left to lose. Wendy listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When Andrea finished, she said 4 words that would change everything. Asterisk, tomorrow. My office. 9 a.m. Asterisk. The next morning, Andrea sat across from Wendy in an office that overlooked all of Houston like a throne room. She slid a leather folder across the glass desk without preamble. Asterisk, Ella's medical file. Stage 3 leukemia. Treatment protocol from M.D. Anderson. Total cost, $347,800. Asterisk. Andrea's hands trembled. How did you? I can pay for everything, Wendy cut him off. Asterisk. Treatment. Hospital bills. A new apartment in West University. A trust fund for Ella's future. Everything. Asterisk. Andrea couldn't breathe. The room tilted. Asterisk. Why would you do that? Asterisk. Wendy stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection ghostly against the Houston skyline. Asterisk. Because I need something you have. Something money can't buy. Asterisk. Asterisk. What? Asterisk. She turned. For the first time, Andrea saw past the ice, saw loneliness carved into her features, desperation she'd hidden behind power suits and board meetings. A woman who'd built an empire but lost herself in the foundation. Asterisk. I want a child, Andrea. Your child. Asterisk. So there she was, adjusting the collar of a waitress uniform that felt like a costume, learning to balance 3 plates on one arm, feeling like she'd fallen from the sky into someone else's life. Her first day at the Belle Meade house, she watched everything. The dynamics between staff, the subtle fear that rippled through the room when certain names were mentioned, the way experienced servers moved like soldiers in enemy territory. She needed this job desperately. But Andrea Jones had never been good at playing small. On her first day, an older server named Dale pulled Andrea aside in the narrow hallway between the kitchen and the dining room. His hands shook slightly when he pointed. 20 years at the Belle Meade house had left marks you could see if you looked close enough. See that corner booth? He whispered, nodding toward the windows overlooking Broadway. Table 9. That's where she sits. Sarah Sampson. Stepwife of Richard Sampson, you know, the oil guy who owns half of downtown. Andrea nodded. Everyone in Nashville knew the name. Every Tuesday and Friday, Dale continued, his voice dropping even lower. Like clockwork. 7 p.m. sharp. He looked at Andrea with something close to pity. One mistake, just one tiny thing wrong, and she'll end you. Not just fired, blacklisted. She'll call every restaurant owner she knows, and trust me, she knows all of them. You'll be serving truck stop coffee in Kentucky before the week's out. His eyes went distant, remembering. Last year, she got a waiter fired because his shoes squeaked. Said it ruined her dining experience. Kid had to leave Tennessee entirely. Andrea listened, processed, didn't show fear. But inside, her legal mind was cataloging evidence. Systematic abuse of power, pattern of behavior, witnesses. That Friday, She watched Sarah Sampson arrive for the first time. She moved like Southern royalty, all grace and steel. Her dress probably cost more than Andrea's entire year of college tuition. Diamonds at her throat caught the light like shards of ice. But it was her eyes that Andrea noticed most. Cold, calculating, predatory. The eyes of a woman who fed on fear. 2 weeks passed. Andrea learned the rhythm of the restaurant, the precise choreography of service, the unspoken hierarchy among staff, the way the kitchen moved like a machine. And she watched Sarah Sampson from a distance, studying her patterns the way she used to study hostile witnesses. Then Friday arrived, and the regular server for Table 9 called in sick. Manager Mr. Holloway, a nervous man who seemed perpetually one complaint away from a heart attack, stood in the staff room looking around like a general choosing a sacrifice. His eyes swept past Dale, past the younger servers, and landed on Andrea. "Jones." His voice was tight. "You're on Table 9 tonight." The sharp intake of breath from the other servers was audible. Dale closed his eyes like he was attending a funeral. Some servers looked away, unable to watch what they assumed would be Andrea's professional execution. Andrea met Mr. Holloway's gaze. "Yes, sir." No panic. No pleading. No bargaining for a different assignment. The simplicity of her response seemed to surprise everyone. She spent the next hour preparing like she was going into court. She memorized Sarah's file with the same intensity she'd once used for legal briefs. Sparkling water, room temperature, exactly 2 lemon wedges, not lime. Bread basket with only cornbread and butter rolls, no sourdough. She knew every detail had to be perfect, or it would become a weapon. She'd faced hostile witnesses before. Aggressive opposing counsel. How different could this be? She steeled herself, checked her uniform one last time, and stepped onto the floor. Because in a way, she was 7:00 p.m. Sarah Sampson arrived right on schedule, sweeping through the entrance like she owned not just the restaurant but the entire block. Andrea approached Table 9, professional and composed. "Good evening, Mrs. Sampson. My name is Andrea, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Sarah's cold eyes swept over her, assessing, dismissing, cataloging. She didn't acknowledge the greeting at all. Sparkling water. Room temperature. 2 lemons. The words were clipped, curt. She was already looking at her menu like Andrea had ceased to exist. Andrea didn't flinch at the rudeness. She executed everything perfectly. The water was presented correctly, condensation-free glass, lemon wedges positioned at precise angles. The bread basket contained exactly what Sarah expected, cornbread and butter rolls, still warm, arranged just so. The she-crab soup arrived steaming, positioned perfectly to the left of Sarah's setting. Sarah ate in silence, occasionally glancing up at Andrea like she was waiting, almost hoping, for a mistake. Andrea noticed it immediately. Sarah seemed disappointed that everything was perfect. This was someone who wanted to find fault. "The Bell Mead signature," Sarah said flatly. "Medium rare." Andrea relayed the order with precision. In the kitchen, the chef personally inspected the steak, his hands steadier than his voice. "This is perfect," he said nervously. "Don't let that woman destroy it." When Andrea placed it in front of her 12 minutes later, it was perfect. The chef had personally inspected it. Medium rare, just as Sarah had specified. Andrea knew what was coming next. Sarah stared at the steak for a long moment. Then she cut into it with her knife, deliberately, slowly, like a surgeon making an incision. She took one bite. Chewed thoughtfully. Then she set down her fork with a sharp click that somehow carried across the entire dining room. Nearby diners looked up. The sound was a signal, a bell announcing the show was about to start. "Is your chef having a personal crisis tonight?" Her voice carried to the nearby tables, perfectly projected. Andrea felt every eye in the restaurant turn toward them. The room went quiet. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Other diners sensed what was happening, the entertainment they'd heard about. "Not at all, Mrs. Sampson. Is something wrong with your steak?" Sarah pushed the plate away like it was garbage. "It's overcooked. Completely overcooked. I asked for medium rare. This is medium well." She paused, letting the accusation hang in the air. Do you understand the difference, or is that beyond your training? The pause before training was deliberate. Poisonous. It implied Andrea was uneducated, incompetent, beneath her. Dale and the other servers froze in horror. They'd seen this before. This was the moment victims usually broke, apologized, scrambled, begged. Andrea looked at the steak. The pink center was clearly visible where Sarah had cut it. She looked at Sarah, then back at the steak. And then she did something no one at the Bell Mead house had ever done. She smiled. Andrea's smile wasn't nervous. Wasn't apologetic. It was confident. "Mrs. Sampson," she said, her voice perfectly pleasant, perfectly professional, "I can absolutely see your concern. That steak does look very pink in the middle." Sarah's expression shifted toward satisfaction. Which is exactly what medium rare means. The shift in the room was palpable. Andrea gestured to the plate, explaining like a patient teacher. "See? The pink center here? That's perfect medium rare." She paused. Now, medium well would be mostly brown throughout with just a hint of pink. 3 days later, David Cho appeared at Wendy's office unannounced. A mutual friend from the Museum of Fine Arts had seen the pregnancy announcement on social media. He'd come to Houston to fight for his child. David stood in her executive suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, original artwork worth 6 figures, the entire city spread beneath them like a kingdom. His face went pale as understanding dawned. Asterisk. "Who are you?" Asterisk, he whispered. Wendy had to choose. David, who'd loved her without knowing her wealth, or Andrea, who knew everything and loved her anyway. But that night, 7-year-old Ella, cancer-free and radiant, crawled into Andrea's lap and asked, Asterisk, "Daddy, is Miss Wendy going to be my new mommy? Because I asked Santa if she could be." Asterisk. Andrea's heart cracked open. This stopped being about contracts or babies or debt the moment Ella started calling Wendy Miss Wendy instead of Ma'am. His daughter had already chosen their future. The paternity test envelope sat unopened on Wendy's kitchen counter that evening. Andrea and Wendy sat on opposite sides of the marble island, both too terrified to reach for it. Asterisk. Does it matter? Asterisk, Andrea asked softly. Wendy looked at him, this janitor who became her salvation, and shook her head. Asterisk. No. It doesn't. Asterisk. They left the envelope unopened. Because they'd realized the truth. It doesn't matter whose DNA runs through that baby's veins. What matters is who stays. And sometimes, the richest people in the world discover that love is the only thing money can't buy, but sacrifice can earn. Thanks you for staying till the end. God bless, and please don't forget to subscribe because more interesting stories are up next.